Hello, everybody. It's Two Bros Divided here. I'm Noah,
And I'm Luke.
and today we're going to talk about water. So first off, we're just going to start going over what I did in my 2024 Tour Divide race. Then we're going to go into some different water holding strategies and just like different strategies for general carrying capacity and what you should really be doing when you're racing this Tour Divide race. So to start off with, I would carry between 3 to 6 liters of water with me every day. So you usually probably drink 5 to 6, but you can almost always refill at gas stations and grocery stores at least once a day. Except for there's a few exceptions in Montana and then down in New Mexico and the Great Basin as well, which is like I think 180 miles plus of no water. So what I would usually do is I would carry a ultra pack, like a running pack on my back that had a Camelback with a 3 liter capacity. So as you can see here, it's a pretty standard REI ultra pack, and it really worked great for what I needed. And usually I would fill it around 1.5 to 2 liters when I had plenty of space and there's a lot of water available. But when I needed to, I could fill it up to 3 liters, and it gave me a lot of capacity. And also kept my back cold when I was going through some warmer sections as well too. So as you can also see here on the bottom tube of my triangle, I've had like a 0.6 or around a half liter, we'll just say, of water from a Camelback Podium water bottle. So this water bottle was great. I didn't use it a whole lot. Usually it just stayed as a full water bottle. It was just as an emergency, but it worked. It worked well for doing things like spraying down my chain when it got really muddy, and just like an extra bit of water supply when mud was not an issue. So moving into the back, I had about a liter of water on the rear arch of my Tailfin Aero Pack. This was just like a standard cheap Gatorade water bottle with the spray nozzle on it. It worked fine. I didn't really have any issues with it, um, and I mean, it didn't really matter for me what water bottle it was, but just as long as I was able to carry some liters. So some of the other places I had extra space is I would usually be able to fit about a liter to a liter and a half in my triangle. So with my triangle, that's it's usually dependent upon how much food I was keeping in there, but I always kind of had that extra space. But so now we're going to kind of go over some of the different strategies and what Luke and I both feel about like the positives and negatives of both of these things. So first off, I'm just going to talk about the Ultra Pack. I'm a runner. I've grown up a runner. I've always liked having stuff when you're moving, staying close to your body and on your back, and not really moving around too much. I've experimented with different backpacks and stuff, but they don't fit your form the way a running pack will. So I'm a huge fan of having that just as a general form of storage capacity. The other thing I really liked about having the Ultra Pack is it allowed to have almost hands-free drinking. So when you're riding, a lot of these times you're on gravel roads that are bumpy, and there's just kind of bad. You kind of have to have one hand stable on your handlebars. Even though like if you could go no handed, especially with packs, it's just kind of more unstable. So being able to eat food and then like put food in your mouth and then grab the thing, or just have it like near your mouth where you can just drink water, was huge for me. And I felt like that was a huge advantage. And also, like I said, New Mexico, every time I would hit a grocery store or town when it was really hot out, or even sometimes in Wyoming, I would fill my bag up with ice cold water and keep me cold for about 2 hours. But yeah, that's what I thought was the best part about the Ultra Pack, and I'll let Luke talk about some of the other things.
Yeah, and I've used an Ultra Pack, but there's definitely a different side to that. So first off, I know Noah was saying there's a running pack there, and that we had you want to keep your hands on the bars. The flip side to that is don't do as much running, do a little bit more biking, and learn how to ride without your hands. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not saying that everyone should do that. Mostly a joke, but no. So the downside of the running pack, something on your back, while initially it does keep you cool, it's also going to be a great place for sweat to form. Now, I'm a big fan of sweat. I like sweat. Sweat's a good thing. I think it's probably even essential for people. Um, I, you say that probably. However, having that pack on, it is just going to be sweaty when it's hot, and after the water cools down, which you're only going to be hitting a town about once a day, maybe twice a day if you're moving really fast. So it's a little bit of a limited benefit, but really, when you're thinking about it, the main disadvantage of doing that, of having the pack on your back, is going to be the added weight. Now, if you're talking about, and we both agree that you probably need somewhere from 4 to 6 liters, which is a gallon and a half in American, um, on your body, on your bike, somewhere because you're going to be using it. Having 3 liters on your back is a lot of weight. So this is where it depends on the person. If you struggle with saddle sores, if you spend the vast majority of your time in your saddle, not getting, not, standing up in your pedals, it's going to make a bigger difference, especially when it comes to saddle sores. And, putting it bluntly, if you're a bigger fellow, more gravitationally blessed like I am, it's going to make a lesser difference. If you're smaller, that could be a lot of extra weight that you're not used to having on your saddle. Plus, you're going to be spending a lot of time on your sit bones. There's some other places that you could put water that could have it there as a permanent solution. Maybe you have an ultra vest shoved somewhere in your pack for the basin, some parts of New Mexico, as an alternative way of doing it. Again, it depends person to person. I was always a fan of doing it without. I just like the freedom, having something off my back. Plus, if it's always hot, you could always freeze a water bottle or grab some ice and put it down in New Jersey on your back, something like that, as an alternative solution. But that's where we differ a little bit. And I know that we're going to talk about some other storage places. So Noah was going to talk about the triangle here a little bit, how that works. So I'll let you go into that a little bit.
Yeah, so as Luke made some great points, and like I said, this is two bros divided. So keep that in mind. We don't agree on everything, but that's good. That's what we want to do. So moving into the triangle, I liked having space in the triangle. I think the triangle is one of your most stable places to put stuff. I think that it connects very well to, and it's a very like center. It fits well into your center of gravity. So like it's not going to sway you to one side or the other. It's going to pretty evenly distribute between your two wheels, and it's really not going to affect your ride at all. So it's like one of the things Luke said about weight. If you're going to throw weight somewhere, you might as well throw weight into the center of the bike. I think that the triangle, however, it is going to depend as you're riding. I think when I started out racing, I didn't have space in my triangle, but I made room for it because I liked it so much. And like I said, just being able to put that on top of like your repair kit or something that's like stable, I think it really just adds a lot of stability, and it's just a good place to have weight.
Yeah, and I actually agree with all that. So I think we would both agree on the fact that your triangle in here, without all that, is the best place for food. I mean, this is the sweet spot right here. It's first off, it's very centered to the ground. It's not going to move around at all. I mean, I'm not even going to get into the whole aerodynamics of it. It's a great place to put stuff. Now, when it comes to water, the assumption is that you're going to have some water, whether that's, on your air bars, on feed bags like here, wherever it is, you're going to have water that is easily accessible. And this is kind of backup storage. Me personally, I like to have my triangle filled up at all times with with essentials that are going to be there. I don't like leaving room, for a backup water. I prefer to keep all of my stuff in the triangle. I know I'm going to need it. Things like repair kit, medical kit, especially very important if you crash like I do. And you can have some food because food, is very easily accessible. You can get into that like that at the top. Things like electronics maps that you're going to get into. So for me, I prefer to, you know, keep my water somewhere else where it's a little bit more interchangeable. Again, not opposed to having an aero pack or a bladder or something that you kind of fill up there and you make do with, but not having it as your primary. That's why, and I know we'll talk about this a little bit here, having these feed bags, something like this, where you can have a water bottle. First off, it's very easily accessible. It's not fully on there yet, but because I just threw it on as a demo. But we're talking about these feed bags, these things, essentially how they work. They're great. Um, you can put your little wrappers in there. I know we talked about this as you're going to have a lot of trash. Great to have these things. And they're built to have a water bottle in there. You can have 2 water bottles in there, very accessible, or you could even put things like, Coke or soda or something like that in there. as well as there's going to be a whole lot of other places. I know Noah has some opinions about the, keeping your water here in these feed bags. I'll let you kind of get into that, and then we'll talk about some of the other places where we could actually put the water. That tends to be, one of my favorites.
Yeah, so actually, I disagree with Luke on this one,
I
and
know.
that is just
For
purely
different
because of
ones.
my experience. And I have found that with feed bags, I think that they can store water very well. But a lot of times, I've actually had water bottles fall out of them quite a few times because one of the steps that you need to do in a feed bag that you don't need to do anywhere else is you have to cinch it down at the top. So, like, there's a cinch, and that usually requires like one skilled hand or two hands sometimes. So, I think it's just harder to take water in and out of when you're riding. I also kind of think that they move around a little bit. Like you don't want something heavy that's like jostling your frame and stuff. And I think it can kind of like pull you to one side or the other. Um, I think that once the water's in there and if they're secured correctly and you have time to like take them on and off, and maybe you're in a touring setting when you're not like, I'm counting every second of every day. I think that they could work very effectively. But in my experience, they're hard to use because a lot of times I use them for food a lot, and I think they're great for food because usually when you're reaching in for food, you don't have to cinch them down all the way. But I did have a few times where I'd have Gatorade bottles in there, and they just would fall out in my descents, and that's just like, oh, you got to go back up the hill and get it, or you sacrifice it to the gods of the Tour Divide or the next person to follow after you. So I just think it's like one of those things where I don't necessarily see it, but I totally get if that's what you want to do. All
Yeah,
right, so
and sorry, go ahead. I mean, like I've used them on both my trips, so it might be biased. I don't use them now because I've got the water bottles here, obviously, but that was the full one. I should clean that out. But having it somewhere where you can get to on the bike is going to be important. I think wherever you decide to put it.
yeah. So speaking of good places to put it, I'm going to talk about the bottom of the triangle. So this water bottle that you can see in this picture right here is, yeah, Luke's also pointing at it right there. That's a great spot to put water for the same reasons, kind of as the triangle. So it's free space. I mean, you don't really need you. I've used just hose clamps and water bottle cages to like fasten stuff down. It's it's going to keep your center of gravity fairly stable, so you're not going to like be thrown off one side to the other, and they really don't move. Um, they're just like they're good like almost like ballast, you could say. And I feel like I've always found them to stay there, and they don't really fall out. And there's a good place to store like about a liter of water. And I've seen people do more, but I think around a liter of water is probably what I would do.
Yeah, you don't want any more than a liter of water if you are doing that. And quite honestly, I'm okay with having something down here as a backup. Now, if you notice where that location is, first off, it depends on your frame, right? So it could be possible that you have a smaller gap between here. Also, you got these big beefy rubber things up there. It's going to be dirty, it's going to be muddy, and your bike's going to kick up a lot of mud. Now, unless you have some sort of a cap or something on top of your water bottle, that thing is going to be caked with mud. Don't, if you're going to put a water bottle down there, make it your least favorite one because that thing is going to get sprayed with mud, covered in mud, and also, cow manure, if you will, which not my favorite thing. I've got a thing for cows. I don't like them. I don't like their poop anymore. So that's kind of why I avoid keeping things down here. That's why, yeah. Plus, you can also have it fall off, which honestly, not that bad of a deal because I don't like putting water down here. For me, I would rather put water up here on the forks. Now, when you do that, so you have, your bike. This also cutthroat actually has a couple of mounts for it, just for that reason. It does have some down there as well, but we're not going to get into that, why it has it there. But if you put water on the forks, a couple of things that are going to be honestly really helpful. So it's out of the way of the mud mostly. I mean, it's still going to get dirty. There's two sides to your fork, unless you're riding a Cannondale fork for some reason that still does the lefty. That's a different can of worms. I'm not even going to talk to you about that. Anyways, you have two different sides, so you can put two water bottles. You can put a lot of water there. Your fork's not going to break under the stress. So that's why I kind of like putting water bottles there. Something that I haven't, and I've done that on both my rides. So very experienced with it. Never had them fall off, but I had some pretty beefy clamps on there. So if you're going to do that, make sure that they're really, really clamped down, so that they don't fall off, because there's a little bit of vibration up in the wheels naturally. Something that I haven't tried yet that I'm thinking about doing is doing the behind the seat post. I'm not sure how well you can see it there, but if you're familiar with triathletes, that seems to be something that they do all the time. I've played around with it. I've done it on some day rides, some things like that. Haven't had any problems with the bottles falling out or anything. You do need a separate mount for it. I haven't. I'm a little. So I'm testing that out a little bit. But something to think about if you're a triathlete, if you've got a good system that works there, I don't see the problem with doing so. I mean, the weight isn't going to be an issue. I mean, we've put like massive packs hanging off the back of your seat. A couple of water bottles, especially if they're storage water bottles. Not going to be all that much weight. Plus, I'm not even going to get into the aerodynamics. It's a bike packing thing, but it is more aerodynamic. It's drafting off of you and you're behind, which is going to provide a whole lot of draft if you're anyone like me. So something to think about. Might be a really good option. I haven't seen it done a whole lot, but I'm going to test it out. We'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, so I've got a couple things. With the fork bottles, I think it's a great idea. I actually think, like Luke said, he's never had them fall off. I've never ran them before. I've always used a suspension fork, so it's a little harder to fasten them on there.
Sure.
So a lot of times, if you're going to fasten it on a suspension fork, what you'll do is you'll take a hose clamp, and then some people actually use a garden hose, like an old one, and they'll like cut it in pieces and like put it on the inside between the aluminum and the actual metal, just to keep it from rubbing through your frame. Because a lot of times duct tape will kind of work, but if you're doing these long rides with a lot of washboard and bumpy terrain, the metal will rub through until it finds metal. And so, or I guess aluminum. So aluminum is a metal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the problems I have with suspension forks. I also think with the suspension forks, they are on the moving side. I guess you can think of it like above the suspension fork. It's like that has had a like the shock has been absorbed, I guess, like by the fork. And this is just on the side where every bump you're hitting, that fork is feeling. It's not like it's getting dulled by the shock, which like what you would if you put it above, like on the aero bars or whatnot. So that's my only thing. If you can get it tight, like clamped down tight enough, I think it works fine. And sometimes you can use one of those like gear straps. Those rubber things work well, and I think that I've seen
Like
people
around the
use.
top of it as like an extra security.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think I see any problem with that. I've also seen people just use those. They're like anything cages where it's just like a mount. It's like an L, and then it like runs. You just have like the bottom, so it just holds the weight, and then you just do two straps, and that seems to work pretty well. And then um, there's no real disadvantage to that as well. So yeah, I think that it's a good idea if you can get it done right. And then just for the seat, the only thing I don't like about the seat is its ability to break. And that's what I found with these type of races.
Sure.
If it can break, it's like Murphy's Law. It will break. And it's just like how bad will it break is kind of going to depend on how well it's like constructed and like how many people are doing it. So if somebody's going to like, try to get behind their seat and break off, whatever, that's fine. As long as you have additional storage options. If you have a really good mount and you have some way, if you have like a tail fin aero pack that's going to like sit below it, so like it can't like break all the way off, so like it'll hit something and it won't it'll like do something like that where it won't like be able to move other than like that spot, then I think it's a great idea. But I just think it's another thing that you don't want to have happen is have this fail because of something that was avoidable by just putting it somewhere else.
Yeah. So bottom line is if you're thinking about doing it, again, we're both a big fan of having different having the triangle pack there. So you're gonna want to look for different places to keep water. Try it out, beat it up a little bit before you do it, and see what works. If it doesn't work on a test ride, it's not going to work on the divide. Um, Look for different bike options if you are planning to go with the fork. Again, one of my favorite things. The Salsa here, she's got a couple of like bolts, so you don't even have to do the whole metal on metal thing. Um, it's something to think about. I know a lot of forks out there, especially things more towards the bike packing realm. They will have mounts. I guess you could put a pannier on there, but why would you? Um, More put your water bottle in there. I think that's a great place to do. We'll let you know how the back of the seat post goes. That's something I've been trying out a lot recently. Outside of that, you just got to do something that works for you, that's comfortable with you. It's really up to you. I mean, it's your water. Water's important. Some would even say essential. Uh, you want to have it. You want to have it accessible, and you want it to be comfortable. That's what I'd leave you with.
Yeah, and like Luke said, it's just as long as you can carry enough for those dry sections and it won't fail, it should be fine. One last thing I think we forgot to mention in our video: some people actually don't do triangle like bags, and you can
That's
put
good.
they can some people actually just put water bottles straight in the frame just because they don't like the side wind. It's kind of turns into a sail when you're getting any sort of crosswinds. So that's another option as well. Like Luke and I have said, we prefer the triangle bags, but if that's something you're looking into, it's not necessarily a bad option. And I think that if you can get your space somewhere else, then that could be a good that could be a good way to do it as well. And those are like secure options, and they're not going to like we said rattle or break or anything like that. They're tried and true.
Yeah. Obviously, these are the natural places to put them. However, I'm just such a big fan of a frame pack. I can't necessarily recommend that. I have seen folks do like this, like half frame bag. Again, you're you got the better thing right there. Just do it. I know, unless if you have a full suspension bike, maybe might make more sense. But try it out and see what works for you. Again, huge fan of the triangle pack. Never going back, except for right now because I'm not racing. But you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with the triangle pack. I think is a great pack and something I highly recommend for anybody racing anything like that as long as the Tour Divide. So yeah. Anyways, well, thanks for tuning in, guys. And if you have any questions, just please feel free to shoot us an email in the description below. And if you have anything else you'd like us to talk about in future videos, please let us know as well. And if there's anything we can do to improve your listening experience. All right, thanks, guys.